Another big loss for the Trump administration. This time, a federal district court judge in Massachusetts has ruled that the president can't hold hostage billions in research funding to strong-arm a university into political compliance. We're talking about Harvard University. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. If you like this content, remember to hit that subscribe button. Like this video, share your comments with us. Brian, where do we start with this decision? Another loss.
Well, let's just start with the decision itself, Sean. I think that's probably a good place to start. So the rationale that the Trump administration was using was we can do this because the school is rife with anti-Semitism, and this money is directly going to fund anti-Semitism on campus. And the court took one look at this and said, no, it isn't. It violates the law for a number of different reasons, a number of important reasons. First of all, and I'll just go through them quickly and then we'll circle back around. There is no indication that that the university was engaged in anti-Semitism related to these issues. The court said that there is some indication of anti-Semitism at Harvard, but it has nothing to do with these issues. Violates the First Amendment. Let's start with that. It violates the First Amendment and their right of freedom of speech. The Administrative Procedures Act, which says that if you're going to take away money that you've already given this institution, you need to go through a certain process and then ultimately just due process, that you can't just do this without giving the university due process. So that's an overview of the ruling.
Yeah, well, I'll back up and I'll give a timeline of what happened. So the Trump administration froze like somewhere between $2.2 and $2.6 billion in federal research grants that were given to Harvard. Grants, money that has been granted to them, already committed. And they decided to freeze this and in exchange demand sweeping changes in governance, in admissions, hiring audits to make sure that, they're not engaged in DEI policies, all under the pretext of we're here to prevent anti-Semitism on campus. But what this decision does, in my view, is it points out that that was just a bullshit, that was cover that the Trump administration was trying to use. There's no they have no genuine concern for the Jewish student population. That's not the real issue.
I think this is pretty well known in the MAGAverse these days, which is the Trump administration is using anti-Semitism, which is a problem, which is an issue, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's an issue at Harvard or it isn't an issue at Harvard, but they're using it as a smokescreen. And there's some evidence that the same people that were behind Project 25 have their own project where they basically said we're going to use the label of anti-Semitism to get what we want at institutions like universities.
Yeah, they're just using smokescreen is exactly right. In fact, I think that's language that the judge uses in the opinion. And by the way, speaking of the judge, of course, the Trump administration came out after this decision and referred to him as a radical activist?
Her as an activist, and as an activist Obama appointed judge, which the definition of an activist judge is one that rules against you, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's a radical activist judge, is someone who rules against you. But I think, Sean, it's important for us to just spend a minute, because I think this gets lost in the message, is what was this money for? This over $2 billion, 2.2 to 2.6, which just for purpose of discussion means $2.2 billion. Okay. Yeah. What was this money being used for? Was it being used for frivolous activities? Was it being used to promote, some student organization? No. It was being used for cancer research. Okay. But sincerely, disease prevention, epidemiology, global health, it represented 46% of the budget for the Chan School on Public Health. I mean, that's literally a school there. 46% of the budget for, which I think, it's accurate to say that when you don't believe in science, why would you fund it?
Right. It's easy to cut off the funding if you don't believe in this stuff. But no, you're right, Brian. I think the money, it is important that we talk about what this money was tied to.
Right. So let me just hit a couple more here very quickly. Climate change. Okay.
Fake news, climate change.
Yeah. Lab investigations into AI ethics, which I guess anytime the word ethics appears, that's contrary to the Trump administration anyway.
Fake news, yeah, DEI.
Quantum computing and materials science. Okay. So I don't think Trump knows what the word quantum means, and I don't think he's ever used a computer. And then a lot of this also involved clinical trial treatments for Alzheimer's disease, which you'd think Trump would be really interested in, right?
Yeah. Well, no, it funded like 900 different research projects. And this is Harvard. I know they want to paint it as an elitist institution that's breeding people that are anti-Trump or whatever, but it's not. This is sort of bipartisan work that's being done, or nonpartisan work. It's not even bipartisan. It's apolitical work. This is research into disease. This isn't tied to the School of Political Science. This isn't tied to like a business school or a law school where it's fostering a certain form of thinking when it comes to politics. This is science research. This is important stuff. And Harvard is one of the preeminent universities in the world. And they play a huge role in developing treatment, medication, in medical infrastructure and science infrastructure, and coming up with studies, doing the studies themselves. I mean, there's so much that's tied to this funding, and to just freeze it. And it's, by the way, it's not like these were like one-time payments. They were multi-year grants and contracts, things that would be doled out over the course of time. And to just freeze it just really guts them. It really just cuts the legs out from under them. And then that's awful. I mean, that kind of frustrates the entire purposes of having higher education, trying to be the best in the world in educating people. People look at Harvard and the universities in the United States as the best place to go get an education. And I don't know why. Isn't it counterproductive to cut this kind of funding? Doesn't it harm our reputation as the leader in science and
right? Well, I was in the middle of a discussion 2 weeks ago with the head of all surgery for one of the largest hospitals on the West Coast, a research hospital, a teaching hospital, and he specifically said that there is no one that comes close to the United States when it comes to research and skills and surgical issues and things like this. So we have been the gold standard for probably the last 80 years. Yeah. And now when you do this, one thing happens is that you lose researchers. You lose them. They go, look, I can't do my research in the United States. I'm going to go to Switzerland. The other thing that happens is donors won't give their money to projects like this because they see it being not used appropriately. And one of the statistics is that for every dollar that went to Harvard for these research projects, there was over a 2-to-1 return in benefits that would come out, things that would come out, researches that would come out, projects that would come out of this. So, it was the gold standard. And for the administration to want to push an ideology on a college or university, which first of all would violate the First Amendment, but secondly, to use something like this where people's lives are at stake, Shant, people's lives are at stake. And they did this because they thought that they could control the ideology, and this isn't what people voted for.
Right. Yeah. Right. Regardless of your political leanings, you wouldn't vote for this. This is a step backwards, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. It's taking away important funding. It's sort of setting everything back, and it has a ripple effect. It has a chilling effect, first of all, on what you just said, further investment into American higher education and into these types of studies and into this type of research that happens in the United States, which in turn, I'm sure will affect American jobs, or jobs that would otherwise be filled by Americans. And it also has a chilling effect. People don't want to invest anymore. People aren't interested in fostering this in the United States at our premier American universities. So,
right. I mean, let's be honest about this, is that if they went after the sociology department, which would be horrible enough, and it is, that would be one thing. And if they sat down and they wanted to get the university to change its practices, whatever those practices may be, that would be another. But to go after Alzheimer's, cancer, climate change, AI ethics, computers, things that actually make a difference in people's lives is just nothing short of in putting people at risk and putting the country at risk.
Yeah.
Because of your agenda. So that's my final thought on it.
Yeah, I think it's a short-sighted move to try to do this. And again, we're talking about this like it held up and Trump was able to do this. No, fortunately, you have the courts again stepping in to right the wrong and telling the Trump administration that they can't do this, that this is a violation of different provisions of the Constitution. It's a violation of the First Amendment, and shutting him down. So another big loss for Trump, another big win for, I think, democracy and justice and higher education. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. If you have any comments, please share them below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Great to hear from you, and see you on the next one.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.